Hello and welcome to another episode of Mono Story. Have you ever watched or heard something that you thought you had seen or heard before? Well, let's think about that with these two anime or manga series, Chainsaw Man and Jujutsu Kaisen. They seem to be very different in the way that they are written and the stories that they are built in. But what if I was to tell you there were more similarities than you think? And that is the question we are going to be asking today. Is Jujutsu Kaisen and Chainsaw Man the same story? In order to compare the two, we must understand what they are. So in the case of JJK, that will be the name for Jujutsu Kaisen going forward. The story starts with Yuji and his two classmates in the occult club, and they are going to their school at nighttime. During this time, they are face to face with these things called curses, and they meet up with Megumi Fushiguro, and he helps them fight the curses. But in order to save his friends, Yuji ingests a thing known as a finger from this character known as Sukuna, and now he has become the vessel for Sukuna, and that is where our story begins. The main premise of this story is to fight and defeat curses throughout the world. In the case of Chainsaw Man, our story begins with Denji and his dog Pucci fighting what is known as devils, and he is in a contract with this Devil Hunters Association, which he finds out these two men are actually friends and associates of the zombie devil. And so he is then ambushed and deleted. But thanks to Pucci, he signs a contract with his dog Pucci, the Chainsaw Devil, and becomes the Chainsaw Man, who fights and hunts devils in the story as they get bigger and more dangerous. That is the premise of Chainsaw Man. Now let's begin with the premise of both of these stories. Their objective is to remove the evil in the world. In the case of JJK, we're talking about curses, but in the case of Chainsaw Man, you're talking about devils. Now, I would argue this is a normal trope for shonen or any type of fighting anime or manga. An example of this would be Bleach. Bleach's objective is to remove hollows, and it runs the exact same way as both JJK and Chainsaw Man, and it does it on a more basic level. That being said, it still gets to that level where we have higher and bigger fights with more powerful enemies. So I think, again, it's just a common trope. What I think makes these shows more similar is their power structure, the use of their ability. We know in both cases there's the act of blood, the manifestation of certain abilities and monsters from the creators that create these big beasts type things. And these are very similar in both JJK and Chainsaw Man. We could even say the villains and their main objective is to rid the world of humanity is very similar because they do not like humans. It's a very common concept with these sorts of shows. But it does seem there is a specific difference that makes these shows unique and makes one, in my opinion, a lot more interesting than the other. That is the case of acquiring their power system. So in JJK, you generally need to be a part of a clan to be able to obtain a certain ability. So for example, Gojo's limitless expansion can only be obtained by Gojo because he's a part of the Gojo clan. So that sort of limitation means that certain characters cannot obtain certain abilities through hard work and perseverance, no matter how hard they try. Now this differs to Chainsaw Man, because Chainsaw Man allows you, as long as you can sign the contract with that devil, you are able to obtain that power. And that is why I believe, in my opinion, now I understand domain expansion, that blows everyone's mind, but domain expansion is pretty cool but only accessible to certain people. You can work as hard as you want. You're not getting any domain expansion like Purple or Murasaki for Gojo. Okay, it's just not happening. You can try all you want. You're just not going to, because you're not a part of the clan. But in Chainsaw Man, you can get a chainsaw if you sign a contract with the Chainsaw Devil. You can see the future if you sign a contract with the Future Devil. And yes, I understand when you sign a contract, you got to give up something. But that's not the point. You have 100% access to that ability as long as you can sign the contract with the devil you are desiring to obtain the ability from. And that, in my opinion, is why Chainsaw Man has a better story development ability than JJK. That does not mean that JJK is bad. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that the ability to acquire powers is much more easier in Chainsaw Man, meaning that there can be better fights and better character development. In conclusion, I believe that Chainsaw Man and JJK are very similar. That being said, they do have their nuances in the story and they are different as well to some degree. I think that either one is enjoyable, so I highly recommend, if you haven't already seen them, you should. Whether it be in manga or anime form, they are both very great ways to consume this story and enjoy it. Until then, I think that is all I have to say for today. If you haven't already liked, subscribed and pressed the bell button, please do, and I will see you on another Mono Story.